were away. So this is Gordon Bowden, and hopefully he's going to be talking to me, George Lees, about the involvement of the Fleming family, which wrote the legendary bond books, in business frauds and international fraud. And he's going to try and tell us about their links to world leaders and to the Rothschild family, who fund most of the financial institutions across the globe and actually own the issuance of money in almost every central bank around the world. It's a historical legacy that is regretful, but we are led to believe that now these people are just involved in the writing of fiction about heroic campaigns in warfare. The truth is horrific. Over to you, Gordon.
Hi, George. Yeah, the Fleming family and partners, which have a corporate entity, one of four under the Fleming network of group of companies, one being Fleming Family and Partners Limited. And they fell into my line of research way back in 2004, when I was doing a money trail for $130 million South African fraud. And what I uncovered then, doing the basic research using very easy search engines, was that these people, via Lord Robin Renwick and William Arthur Waldegrave, were linked to a massive infrastructure which is actually operating transcontinental organized crime and money laundering operations involving billions. It's billions of pounds. So when you look and dismantle, if you could, dismantle the corporate directors of Fleming Family and Partners, and you will see one person that fell straight away within my area of research, and that's John Anthony Craven, who has 25 linked directorships. And one of the biggest ones was Galahad Gold PLC, with a very well-known investigative individual on my books, and that was Neil Lindsay Herbert, sorry about that. And he, with others, were involved in the asset stripping of Areva nuclear fuels via Euromin, with some very well-heeled players, including directors.
So that's a recent event, and you, I'm led to believe, have provided evidence that is leading to the prosecution of corrupted directors. Sir
Yes.
John Anthony Craven, though, is involved in the governance of the Deutsche Bank.
That's correct.
And he's also involved in the creation of false news through the Ingenious Film Company LLP. We've talked about those issues in the past. I'd love for you to reveal his co-directors on Fleming Family Partners Limited, because they are people like the von Bismarck dynasty.
Yeah, that's one of the. I believe that to be possibly a granddaughter of the Bismarck entity from the German lineage. And when you look at her holdings, it opens up another avenue for conjecture if you want to talk about companies that have been asset stripped.
And just looking down the list of directors or previous directors on that company, we've got a whole host of relatively anonymous Flemings: Robert Fleming, Roderick John, Valerie Patrick.
Well, that's why it says Fleming Family and Partners.
And the registration addresses for people that are reputed to live as tax exiles in the Caribbean, where are these companies trading from?
Well, as I said, that if in the bigger picture of asset stripping a company, you have to set up a recipient where you can legally transfer forex from one company to a subsidiary company, which can be registered in a tax haven like the British Virgin Islands, Panama, Channel Islands, where our Financial Services Authority will have no jurisdiction on uncovering the money trail and to where that cash has been divvied up into multiple other sub-companies of the substructure which is registered in those corporate entities of the tax havens. What they're trying to do is basically hide the money, and that's why this country and the people who are structured to protect it are complicit, because they're not prepared to examine the network, and I'm talking about a massive network of well-heeled people who are part and complicit in an organized crime network to asset strip thousands of companies which are representative of British trade and industry, albeit that most of them are under exotic named oil, gas and mining companies.
So on the list of directors we have a lady called Miss Drusilla Charlotte Jane Rowe, who between the 2nd of June 2000 and the 27th of June 2000 completed her business with the Fleming family partners. Could you tell me why someone with such a short span in office, what sort of role would they be underpinning there? She's been a director at 572 companies, 554 of them which are now dissolved.
Well, she would be the complicit auditor or accountant that that lists and registers the companies. That's why it's only for 25 days.
Yeah.
And so what she does is she lists those companies, and then you will see, if you look at the header above that list of directors, you will see how many have dissolved and she has resigned from. So she will be the instigator of launching companies out of her structure.
And can you tell us a little bit more in brief about companies that you revealed earlier to me in a much longer discussion that are involved in Syrian politics?
Yeah, well, that takes you back to the very company, the British Syrian Foundation.
So which director links us to that company?
Well, that was
Khalid Rida Said.
Yeah, Khalid Shahiba.
Khalid.
And he I found out was linked to a company with Paul Mack, a company called UK Oil and Gas Limited, which had one director, Paul Mack. But when you search the infrastructure, you will find out he is interlocked to Khaled Shahiba. That's Chehabi, and he was a director. I think he's got 4 directorships, but one of them was the British Syrian Society Limited. And if you expand on that network, you will then find others who he was a co-director with. And this is where, in the current press, we have people in Syria that are instigating rebel covert actions against the Syrian people. Now, as an ex-military man, I understand a little bit more than the average person in the street about logistical supply to support any force, be it friendly or foe, that you have to be able to provide the logistics of providing munitions, arms, intelligence on target facilities, weakness points. So they will all have specific guidance, possibly from our military or ex-members of our SAS, to assist those.
Can you tell us in brief, because we're already approaching 10 minutes on this one, about the links between the Fleming family directors that we're talking about here and munitions provision, and people like Jonathan Aitken and maybe the Churchill dynasty, who were very close to Fleming in World War II, and where, you know, there's strong accusations that both those families were working in complicity between the Allies and the German forces, and the whole thing is often portrayed as a profiteering exercise? So links to Aitken and current munitions suppliers?
Yeah, well, you'd have to look back at Jonathan Aitken's military munitions companies that he was part of with Sir Mark Thatcher. Now you all know, or many people would know, that Sir Mark Thatcher was arrested and detained in South Africa while I was there, as being part of and complicit with the Equatorial Guinea coup with Simon Mann. And what happened was he was part of the fundraising structure required to instigate the purchase of weapons and munitions from a Zimbabwe military company, and they were involved then with the Equatorial Guinea coup. But Mami got him off that with just a fine, and also complicit in corrupting a criminal fraud case of which my partner was one victim. However, yeah, Jonathan Aitken, he was a director of a company called BMARC, B-M-A-R-C, which is a Belgian company that was then acquired by Astra Holdings, of which Gerald Reevely James.
Just briefly, I'd prefer if you could profile a number of munitions suppliers that are linked into these networks, rather than go into detail.
The main one for Britain is BAE Systems, and that's why a certain Conservative MP instigated the stopping of the Serious Fraud Office in doing the money trails, which would have brought a lot of senior politicians to jail. And so it was thought that in the British public interest that they stop the Serious Fraud Office investigating further into the Al Yamama deal, which involved British military aircraft sales out of BAE Systems, which sorry, I've got a phone call coming in, George. Can we just do a pause there?
I reckon if I can pause it.
I just got a phone call, George.
Okay, yeah. This happens a lot in my experience. So what Gordon's been telling me is that the shocking involvement of these people still in international affairs. They're running their businesses in tax havens, and for decades they've been accused of being double agents in global wars. What we're seeing now is the continuing involvement in people like this, and I'm hoping to get Gordon focused on the links.
Okay, I'm back, George.
Okay.
Sorry, it was quite a suspicious call. The caller withheld the number. I didn't get to the
This
call.
happens to me all of the time. Whenever we're discussing anything sensitive, they make you divert into the phone call. So I just let mine ring now.
Yeah, well, they say they didn't leave a message and it was a withheld number, so it doesn't matter.
So can you tell us, we're talking big names. We've mentioned Mark Thatcher, we've mentioned Jonathan Aitken, we've mentioned two of Britain's biggest munitions suppliers. Can we talk about the links to the people that we believe to be the world masters in the form of the Rothschilds?
Yeah, well, that goes back in history to the Rothschild family being the conveyancer of funds in the Chinese-Japanese Anglo Wars. That they provided money to both sides for them to batter the hell out of each other. As most people know, that when you start a conflict, it involves vast amount of money and debt facilities for a country to be able to conduct a war. Nobody looks at the money trail. They don't really care, because the cannon fodder, which are the militaries of all sides, are just sent with tools of destruction to go and do what politicians couldn't do.
And can you now briefly profile for us some of the links between the Rothschild dynasty and the banks that they run, and leaders of NATO's armies like Guthrie in Dundee and Sir Mike Jackson, people like that are profiteering as NATO commanders-in-chief, and then they leave that profession as multimillionaires and take up office in private security firms. Can you talk about the links between the Rothschilds and our militias currently?
Well, as I said, if you looked at the forensics of the Equatorial Guinea coup, you come up with private military companies that work covertly and are complicit with UK governments and other governments to start a conflict. And what they do is they can then use their PMCs, private military companies, logistics, to enable transportation companies, which are all covert companies, containers companies that move the munitions and logistical supply support to foreign countries, shipping companies. All these people are interlocked and complicit with government strategies, I believe, to conduct covert wars.
But you're talking small beer, individual countries at a time. The Balkans conflict that was engineered as a necessary evil by Western governments, and the genocides that occurred there, you've not got any information on the links to Guthrie. You know, the guys that were in Tony Blair's peerage from around the year 2001. So Guthrie has got a long period of service with NM Rothschild Bank, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that's the same bank that Norman Lamont is associated with?
Yeah.
Yeah. So profile it. I want you to tell how the world's controllers manipulates through its directorate NATO's armies.
Well, I said the easiest way in dismantling individuals' involvement is to look at their corporate history. And when you look at companies like Premier Oil PLC and Heritage Oil PLC, you will see that the directors of those companies are ex-SAS commanders and major military officers who are given a supporting role in protecting the assets of these virtual companies that are used purely as money laundering shells from major companies. People like BP and Shell, if they want to hide money, it is no better way to sell off defunct, emptied oil wells where they will have no recourse to rehabilitation, and sell them on to a network of fraudsters and con artists who then use those emptied wells to then start a fake oil and gas and mining.
So we're on to fraud again at a relatively small... I cannot get you to talk about the things that you've talked to me about in the past, about the Rothschilds' domination of these sectors and the use of people like... I believe that he's been in the House of Lords since 2001. That chap Guthrie that you told me all about, and his links to the money-lending families that keep the world at war on every continent as a profit-making stream.
Well, let me just go into his directorship history. What's his full name that you have?
This is Charles Guthrie. Is it...
Without having to go upstairs to get a...
Okay, well, let's just drop it. I just thought that what you were going to do at the end of this interview was profile the...
a specific name out of
he's one of NATO's leaders. I've popped in Mike Jackson, and they're running private military companies, or
That's right.
they're running companies that are in charge of the parking issues in our metropolitan cities that used to be run by civil servants or public servants, but are now run by companies like G4S and Mike Jackson's company.
And so let's put this slightly in context. Let's say that they're looking to disband regiments within the British Army, the Royal Air Force and the Navy, and incorporate private military companies, just like G4S, is that they rely upon the territorial forces to provide frontline coverage as they dissolve and dismantle the professional forces. And so what you look at then is that when you look at private military companies, you're looking at people like executive outcomes and the scumbuckets who do the dirty work for government politicians, who can then blackmail those politicians who are currently running this country in order to run their own criminal empire. And that's exactly what they're doing.
Okay, so we're up to 20 minutes now. I would like to emphasize that, the warmongering never ends, but the warmongering is run by the same families for century after century. An example of that is the Future of Russia Fund, the Russia Oxford Fund. Britons manipulate the rest of the globe along with Americans, and we keep them perpetually at war. The Future of Russia Foundation has a presence in the form of Henry Kissinger, the Peace Prize winner. He shares the directorate with members of the Rothschild family and people who negotiate the B-Sky-B contract with the British government to manipulate the false news about all of those campaigns. Can you tell us the weight of the issues that the Rothschilds manage around the world, and how NATO's armies are now deployed on their behalf on every issue that arises, so that the tyranny can continue and the financial shenanigans that underpin every war that we've had are allowed to continue unchallenged? Just very briefly.
Well, George, as an ex-member of the Royal Air Force, we always had to follow the directives of the government of the day, and nobody is entitled as a serviceman to challenge those. We just had to go and do what we were told to do.
Well, you just die quietly, but now they have a microphone on the lapel. They have
I've understood the links between politicians and massive corruption and fraud, theft and money laundering. I've begun to question those that sent me to do certain things that I did in the Royal Air Force, because the biggest thing that it did to me was it destroyed my faith in those people who were given knighthoods and we have to call right honourable. They are not right honourable. These are the filth that should be facing long jail terms if you uncover and dismantle, like I have, their skullduggery and their criminal actions. Nobody questions them because they sit in a position of power that decree laws for this country in the member of the House of Lords or members of Parliament. I would like to stand on a pedestal and question Peter Lilly with his involvement in Tethys Petroleum, or MP Peter Hain, because they all have questions to answer into their involvement with companies that I have explained. I firmly believe that these are Ponzi scams and part of a massive money laundering structure.
Yeah, so I think I was hoping that you were going to show us the infrastructure and the chain of command that makes the world's executive decisions and also makes the false news that we see every evening on the TV, which last night was about conscripts for ISIS being raised and brought up in peaceful and blessedly industrial productivity of Aberdeen. Yet what they are doing now is warmongering like they did in 1914. It's a 100-year anniversary. That is very important for the world masters, and they are creating tension now to cover up the financial crimes that you describe so articulately. But I think we should stop there, because that's 24 minutes. And again, I think we failed to get over the message about how the world is controlled by its strategists, and I was hoping that we...
Well, George, quickly, wars cost money, and to get that money, you have to have and go on begging hands and knees to somebody that's going to give you the money to conduct that war. And the only people that can give you that are the major bankers, which include the Rothschilds, the Oppenheimers, the JP Morgans, and now you will find out why people like Tony Blair are complicit with JP Morgan, because he's employed by JP Morgan and he works for JP Morgan in setting up other interlocks. If you look deep, it's there. It's just you need time.
And it's the same with the EU leaders. They're all tied to banks. They're all tied to the crashing of their own companies, their own countries' economies. And everything that we are seeing is premeditated and at the people's expense. That's what we want to, try and expose here, that the financial crimes are continuous, and Gordon and I are trying on a daily basis to show you the simple methods that they use to steal from the people.
It's easy, George. All you need to start this off is to understand that when you look a little deeper into the front of a name as a politician, what you will uncover is their historical involvement with companies that have financially collapsed. And these are the people we place our trust in to bring us out of the mire of economic disaster. These are the people that have led to the economic disaster. Just check their companies. If they were such brilliant leaders, why have they got a trail of financial disaster? Well, it's just the blind leading the blind, isn't it?
Well, I believe that they're much cleverer than we portray them as, because they're able to fool the masses like this for century after century. But in 1914, nobody except the elites that pull these tricks on the poor were able to read and write. Now we have globalized communication, which is why we're getting so many hits on each video clips that we make, because we're in touch with anti-treason fighters in every continent on the globe. Yet these guys will not fight. They operate in pinstripe suits. They are cowards in the office.
If you've watched the Q&A in Parliament and you've watched the contest of jibber-jabber between both sides, you will like the Muppet Show. These people are ordinary people. It's like watching a group of actors from Emmerdale or Coronation Street go through a script of ridicule. These are the people that lead us into conflict and sit quietly back and figure out how they can become directors of munition companies or support structures that are going to make a fortune out of mass carnage. And anyway, you can go on and on. Let's rather stick to specifics, which are very simple to follow for any listener. Just to take a pen and a notebook, jot a few names down, and then use 2 basic search engines to provide 100% forensic evidence of the complicity of those right honourable people into mass fraud, theft and money laundering. It's very simple.
Okay, thank you for that, Gordon. And the implications for savers, taxpayers, pensioners, investors are that you have no future until you confront your elected officers with this. Yesterday, Gordon talked to UKIP. If UKIP fail to blow the whistle on what the major conventional parties are doing, we have leverage to shame them as another set of Muppets that are there to divert the people from the crimes against the people. Is that fair, Gordon?
Oh, that's 100% fair. What I disclosed and passed on a few documents and I gave a full overview of the massive fraud that's being conducted on the alternative investment market, which is the penny stock, of billion-pound organised crime, fraud, theft and money laundering using virtual exotic named oil, gas and mining companies, which are nothing more than virtual companies. We'll see where they go.
So UKIP, please bang the table on our behalf. Gordon and I would be interested in finding out how you run on behalf of UKIP, because we know that we will not divert from the truth. Yeah, I'm interested in becoming a parliamentarian. When I discuss that with any of the Scottish parties, they shy away. They do not provide me with any further details. All of them are slaves to the corrupted system that we've just described in the last half hour. Would you be prepared to run for office, Gordon, or is that a dilution of your time?
No, I've got one objective, and that is to find out the truth on those who stand in Parliament and their political objectives. If it's not acting for the people of this country, that they should be taken in handcuffs and leg chains to a place of a dark place, a very dark, filthy, stinking place, and left to rot there. Because trust me, what I have seen and what I've understood in the running of this country leaves a lot to be desired when we call other countries' politicians murdering thugs. Tell me, why haven't we gone in and arrested Robert Mugabe? Well, best you ask the directors of Lonro and Lonmin all about that.
Yeah, and now we're right up to the head of that money lending sector again when we talk about that. But we best stop now because we're over that 30-minute limit. If you want to hear more about corruption within the Westminster building, look up on YouTube the videos that we made on, what was the foundation, the Westminster Foundation for Democracy Limited. It is a series of massive Ponzi schemes within both chambers in Westminster, and it's run by grandees of all of the parties. Have a look for that on the search terms on YouTube. Thank you ever so much, Gordon.
Have a nice day, George.
Bye-bye.